Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1114. I know it's not day 114. We're way past that. It's got to be 1114, 1114. Sunday, April the 26th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, don't forget to get your comments in, your picks in, I should say, in the comments section of this video for your pick for Dumbass of the Week. The comment section of this video. Try to get your comment in by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so your vote will be counted. Okay, so the last couple of days has pretty much been dominated as far as in the Spygate news. A lot of things going on, but obviously the Michael Flynn situation has really been fairly dominant over the past 2 days or so. And Conservative Treehouse has done 4 or 5 stories in the last 2 days, really deep dive into the whole Michael Flynn fiasco, and they tie it to some other things. It's way too complex to try to go through in a 30-minute video. It's probably easier if you just go over to Conservative Treehouse and read it for yourself if you're really interested in the Michael Flynn story and everything that's going on with that. And of course there's deep ties between that and the Spygate thing, and they do a good job on Conservative Treehouse of tying all that together. So I'm just going to cover a couple of the main points of the Gateway Pundit story. But if you want to get into the real serious details, a real deep dive into the Michael Flynn situation and what's going on there and how it relates overall to the Spygate case, I urge you to go over to Conservative Treehouse. And there's 3 or 4 stories just in the last 2 days that really take that dive. So I recommend you go check that out. But in the meantime, I just want to go over a couple things that was in the Gateway Pundit article from yesterday. And it's talking about how Eric Holder may have had a role to play in the frame-up of Michael Flynn. Now, when Eric Holder, and we know he's certainly one of the most corrupt attorney generals to ever serve, and really is single-handedly responsible for creating this real deep state anti-Trump group of people within the DOJ. A lot of those people were put in during Holder's tenure. And those are the very people working with lawfare who've been spearheading the effort to take out Trump in a coup since he was elected. So a lot of that is tied to Eric Holder. But as is pointed out in the Gateway Pundit article, Eric Holder, after he left the Obama administration, he went back to work and became a partner with his old law firm, Covington. And I guess this is a somewhat prestigious law firm, a lot of big-name people, very expensive law firm. And, of course, Eric Holder became had worked there in the past. He came back and became a partner with Covington. Now, Covington is who Michael Flynn originally went to have them draw up help him complete the form for the FIRA form, the Foreign Registrations Act form that you fill out if you're a former government official, or even if you're not government official, a lobbyist or whatever. If you're going to be having relations or business dealings with foreign governments, people representing foreign governments, you're supposed to have this FARA form filled out. And that's originally the law firm that Michael Flynn went to get this FARA form completed. So now that you have that background, here is the story. So it appears that Eric Holder worked for Covington and was not just worked for, but was a partner in Covington law firm. And that was Michael Flynn's original first legal team. Covington, we now know, withheld evidence from Michael Flynn and even asked Flynn to give up dirt on Donald Trump. They, of course, hired individuals that were involved in the Spygate scandal while they were representing Michael Flynn. Now, Flynn first obtained attorneys from Covington to represent him in the filing of his FARA form in 2016, which they botched. Then, Covington attorneys advised Michael Flynn to plead guilty to charges he did not believe he was guilty of. Covington fleeced Michael Flynn for millions of dollars in legal fees. And in one of his very first meetings with Covington, they asked Flynn if he had anything on Trump, telling him it would give them leverage against the government. Flynn said he didn't know of Trump doing anything wrong. Covington never told Michael Flynn that there was anything wrong with his FARA filing that they prepared. Then they told Flynn over Thanksgiving weekend of 2017 that the special counsel was planning on bringing charges against him, and told him if he did not plead guilty that he could be looking at 15 years in prison and would receive the Manafort treatment. They didn't tell Flynn that the FBI agents who interviewed him did not believe he lied. Had he been told that, he says he never would have pled guilty. Flynn kept telling his lawyers that he did not lie, but they kept telling him to stick with the plea deal. Now we find out that Covington also had a secret deal with the Mueller gang, but that wasn't shared with Flynn either. Now, that's a tricky one there. There could be something illegal here, because what they're talking about is this side deal that the Mueller special counsel worked out with Covington lawyers, which is if Flynn would plead guilty, that they would not go after his son, Michael Flynn Jr. Now, there is a court case from decades ago, but a relevant court case from decades ago, where that particular method of dealing is not above board, should not be done, not legitimate, and it's crooked. And it could cause criminal liability for the government and for the law firm if they engaged in that. And we know that they did in this case. And they never told Flynn this. They never told Michael Flynn, hey, we got a special deal with special counsel. If you'll plead guilty, they won't indict your kid. Never told Michael Flynn that. This was a secret deal cut between Mueller's special counsel and between Covington law firm. They never advised Flynn, and they're not supposed to be doing that. Then Covington hired the Department of Justice attorney, Trish Anderson, whose name has come up an awful lot in the Spygate story because she is deeply involved in the Trump-Russia collusion scam and the crimes associated with it. Now, I don't know about you, but just reading that story and then going over and reading the several stories over on Conservative Treehouse, there's a good story at the Washington Examiner. I've probably read 15 very good stories over the past 2 days, really digging into this whole deal with Flynn, his original law firm, and everything that's happened in the last couple of days. And you come away from all this information, you're just furious. You're enraged. You cannot believe that this actually happened, not just to any ordinary American citizen like you or I, but this was a 3-star general who was already beginning to serve as the president's national security advisor. I mean, this is a fairly important person. And the way that they were able to go after him and the things that they did is frightening. It's absolutely frightening. Because imagine what they could do to you or I. If they do this to General Flynn, imagine what they could do to you or I. It's really frightening. And it's very angering to know that this kind of crap went on, particularly to target someone like Michael Flynn, who appears, I don't know him personally, but he appears to be a very good man. And, a 3-star general, and, it's just amazing that you could go through your entire life, be a solid, upstanding individual, serve the country, serve in the military, have all this good stuff that you've created in your life, and then have it all just go to shit because you were politically opposed, policy-wise, to a presidential administration who then fired you, but didn't just stop there, but then went after you to destroy your life, and even went as far as to wanting to destroy your son's life if you didn't allow them to destroy yours. It's sickening. And anyone, in my opinion, in the government who was a participant in this needs to go to jail for a long time. But this law firm, Covington, I certainly hope that as soon as this case is dismissed, and I expect it will be, that the very next move by Sidney Powell will be to recommend that General Flynn file a lawsuit against Covington. Because a lot of the things they did, this is not incompetence. This is not legal malpractice. This is malfeasance. This is, Covington Law Firm wasn't just incompetent. They were working against their client here. Essentially working with the Mueller team to give the Mueller team exactly what they wanted from Flynn. When your client is telling you that he does not believe that he lied, and when you know, as the law firm, that the two interviewing agents said that they didn't believe that your client lied, but you continue to tell your client that he should plead guilty to lying, and on top of that, to plead guilty to these FARA violations, when it was you, yourself, the law firm, who filled out and helped the general fill out the FARA form, which is later proven to be not correct. I mean, it's almost like they set him up. It's almost like they purposely messed up the FARA filing to put him in jeopardy. I mean, you could say it's incompetence, but this is one of the most high-dollar law firms in the city. Heavy players. Former Attorney General, a partner in this law firm. There's too many things that went on with this law firm to it just to have been incompetence. There's a lot more going on here, I think, than we even know. So I do hope that when Flynn, once his case is dismissed, I do hope that he goes after this law firm, Covington, and their partners, including Eric, what's his name? Holder. He is a dirty, dirty dog. And it's sickening. It really is. But hopefully this case, and I do believe it will be dismissed soon. There's more documents coming. For some reason, they just won't let this thing. They should just kill it now. We don't need any more evidence. I mean, it's all the evidence you need to dismiss this case is there now. Now, if they want to continue, in fact, the DOJ should investigate the Mueller team, Covington, and what may have been going on with them. But they need to cut Michael Flynn loose right now. He's been through enough. This thing is over. End it for Michael Flynn, and then let the DOJ, sort it out between what sort of things were done between Covington and the government. Was there crimes? Get it out in the open. Let Michael Flynn be done on his end, and let him go ahead. And I hope take legal action against Covington, because there's a lot of problems. At the very least, incompetence, and I think it's going to be very hard for them to make the incompetence argument. They appear to be working with the Mueller team. That's what it looks like. They absolutely were not representing the interest of the client. So, we had a story that came out yesterday on CNN.com, believe it or not. CNN.com getting a statement from a witness, one of the witnesses who testified to Mueller. They didn't specify if it was just an interview or if it was actually in a grand jury testimony. But this person described what it's like being in an interview with John Durham. And the word phrase that they used of what it's like when you're in a interview session with John Durham, the witness says it was, quote, he's like a proctologist. Like a proctologist. Yeah, that's been my understanding as well, that he's very thorough. Turns over every rock. And there's more news on more people who've been added to his team yesterday, so we'll get to that in just a moment. It should also be noted that in the last 2 days, this story about this woman, Tara Reid, and now this video pops up of her mother calling the Larry King show back in, I think, 93. They tried to suppress this for several days, but you just can't suppress something like that. It's just too big. They did remove it from the archives now. You can't go back and order that show. It's been pulled. So they did that, but you can't stop something like this. And now there's a lot of true believers in the Me Too movement, the far left progressives, particularly those who don't like Biden, Bernie supporters, really pushing this now. And the mainstream media like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and some others, CNN, who've all been avoiding talking about this issue for the last couple of days, now have no choice. And we're now starting to see both Politico and CNN, their online edition, actually reporting on the story. Now, they're still reporting on the story. They're still kind of drawing questions around it. But they are now being forced to actually report on the story, where they tried to ignore it for a couple of days when it was actually a really big piece of information. And the number one, one of the number one trending hashtags on Twitter for the past 2 days has been "Drop Out Biden." Hashtag "Drop Out Biden," trending number one. Yeah, this is not going to go away. Tara Reid has filed a formal complaint. The police are going to investigate that, because when you file a complaint, they have to investigate it, even if the statute of limitations is up. And of course, sometimes they'll do that because they think a person's filing a false report. But since this video popped up, I think that answers any question as to whether or not she filed a false report. And all the evidence suggests that she did not file a false report, that this actually did happen, or at least she believes it did happen. She is not lying or whatever. So filing an official police report with all the other things that we have learned shows me and tells me that this is not going away. And you are starting now to see a lot of Democratic Party insiders who are supposed to be getting behind Biden are now starting to question whether or not they can continue with Biden, because they believe that some of this stuff is going to dog him to the very end. And even though they know that the Democratic media won't cover it, and a lot of Democrats in Congress won't talk about it, the fact is they know when they get into the general election that Trump and the Fox News and other, say, what they consider right-wing media, they're going to be talking a lot about it, and a lot about China, and a lot about Ukraine, and a lot about other things that Biden has been involved in. The fact that he's been given a free pass throughout the entire primary by his opponents in the Democratic media, and the fact that he's given a free pass by the Democratic establishment, that may have got him through to take out Bernie. But now he is in a situation where he's beginning to enter into the general election as the Democratic nominee. And you can bet that the team he's going to be going up against is not going to pull any punches on any of these issues. You're going to hear a lot about Ukraine, a lot about China, his dealings, his son's dealings, his family's dealings with other countries, not just China and Ukraine. You're going to hear more about Tara Reid. You're going to hear about a lot of things. And on top of that, he's got the dementia issue that's not going away. So there are many Democrats in the Democratic establishment who are realizing, and many of them already know, many in the media already know, that that Joe just doesn't have what it takes to get it done. What they're hoping for is, I think, one of two things. Either they're hoping that they can tar and feather and beat Trump down enough to where they can beat his numbers down low enough to where he could lose, or they just want to try to have Biden in there just for name recognition, just to get enough Democrats to come out and vote that they don't get slaughtered in the down ballot races. This is probably the two considerations they have, but that requires that Biden be able to make it through the season. And right now, it looks like maybe they could do that, but I'm telling you, here in the next month, no more than 2 months, this whole coronavirus is going to be behind us. Things will be getting back to normal. You know, there's going to be debates. If they think that they can avoid debates, that's not going to happen. And because Trump's not going to let it happen. He's going to make it very perfectly clear that he wants 3 debates, standing up for 2 hours with Joe Biden on national TV. And he's probably going to want to negotiate a little bit on who does those debates. So they're not going to be able to stop that, and they're not going to be able to stop what's coming for Joe Biden. So they all know this. Again, my gut tells me that there's something going on here behind the scenes, that their plan was never for Joe Biden to actually become the nominee, only for him to be able to defeat Bernie. Whoever could have defeated Bernie, that's who they were all going to get behind. And once they saw that it could only be Biden, that's when they had to get behind him. But now that Bernie's been taken care of, for the most part, suspended his campaign, they probably would like Biden to collect up as many delegates as possible. And at some point, I think that either at the convention or just prior to the convention, they're probably going to have to make a change. And I believe the person most likely, and the only person I think is even a viable choice, is the Rotten Reverend Clinton. I don't think there's anybody better than Biden, really. Anyone who could do any better, I should say, than Biden. The Rotten Reverend Clinton, she won the popular vote last time. She's got the organization. She can raise the money. She's got some health issues of her own, but nothing like the sort of Biden has. And she will take it to Trump, unlike some of these other people. So I say, keep your eyes open on this one. Never say never. Anything can happen. I continue to have a very difficult time believing that the Democrats are really going to go with Joe Biden. We'll see if they think they can pull that off. Maybe. I wouldn't want to put my money on it, but we'll see what happens there. But there's no question that this dropout Biden hashtag over this Tara Reade allegation is definitely, it's got traction, and it's not going away. It's getting worse. And the last couple days now, I haven't really commented on this because I've been waiting to find out if there's any really definitive conclusion as to what is going on with Kim Jong-un. So we got these reports about 2 days ago coming out of Japan that he was either dead or brain dead, and that apparently 2 weeks ago he was out somewhere in the countryside on his horse or something, and he fell to the ground and grabbed his chest, and he was taken to the hospital, and they supposedly did a heart surgery on him. They were going to put a stent in his heart, and something went wrong, and that he is either dead or brain dead. The South Korean media is disputing that, saying that we don't have any information that that's true. So we're getting conflicting reports. We still don't know. Apparently, if Pompeo's not commenting on it, so if he knows anything, he's not talking about it. Nobody's really wanting to comment too much on it right now, but it does seem awfully strange what's going on here. On top of that, we get another story yesterday that a Chinese delegation had gone to North Korea. So something's obviously going on. The successor to Kim Jong-un is likely to be his sister. But whenever you have, in these types of communist countries like this, dictatorships, whenever you have these types of issues, there's always a struggle for power. We saw this in the Soviet Union when they kidnapped Gorbachev. And it was like a week there where none of us knew exactly who was running the show over there. And if the military hardliners are going to take over, or what was going to happen. Of course, fortunately, Yeltsin emerged as the new leader. So, I mean, that calmed a lot of people down. But the same is going on here. You can bet that there's some old military hardliners who are going to try to fill the power gap there if Kim Jong-un is really done. And his sister, I don't know much about her, but I assume she, follows in the same track that Kim Jong-un does. I believe she was with him on his last two trips, especially the one in, I think, Singapore, where he met with Trump. This is bad news. I mean, I don't love Kim Jong-un by any stretch. but there has been a lot of good progress made, and he and Trump have at least reached some sort of an understanding, and there have been, you know, some really good improvements made in the situation there with North Korea and the U.S. and of course between North Korea, Japan, North Korea, South Korea. There have been, you know, some very good things that have happened in the past couple of years since Trump's been president. So there's been progress made, and you kind of hate to see that rolled back. And we know that China has a heavy hand in what goes on in North Korea. And the thing is that, you know, if Kim Jong-un is gone, he pushes back on the Chinese sometimes, but we don't know that his sister would, or we don't know that the Chinese delegation may put their support behind one of the military generals or someone else other than her, so that they can continue to control and manipulate the situation. It's not in China's best interest for North Korea to have really good relations with South Korea, Japan, and the United States. They prefer to have North Korea as an adversary to all of these countries because they can use and manipulate situations by doing so. So it's not clear what's going on there, but I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about it. Hopefully it's not true, or hopefully he makes a recovery. But you know, that's one thing you got to think about when you're a dictator and you need a medical procedure. You know, the doctors who, you know, are going to be working on you may not be big fans. That's just something you always have to keep in mind. Most dictators go to another country to get treatment, but my guess is whatever happened was like an emergency, and he probably didn't have a chance, or he probably would have went somewhere else to get that treatment. But we'll keep watching that story and see where it goes. And I don't know if it had anything to do with coronavirus. I don't know. But either way, that's what's being reported, and it's still nothing definitive. Trump did his press briefing on Saturday, but did not take any questions. And then he sent out a tweet afterwards suggesting that he may not do any more press conferences. Or certainly he may not be taking questions at any more press conferences. And I don't blame him. I mean, all he does is, the only questions he gets is these crazy gotcha type questions from a bunch of harebrained leftist reporters, and then they go out and they smear him instead of reporting on what happened in the press conference. They use it as an opportunity to smear him, and they really don't provide the public with a good service of telling them what information was learned in the press conference. They just use it as a platform to smear him. So I don't blame Trump at all if he were to end the press conferences. I would just not have media there. I mean, I think it would be much better if he would just have a press conference. He can bring in a couple of experts, make it like an hour a day, or maybe less, just like a daily update. And there's no need to have reporters in the press there. There's no need for that whatsoever. We're far enough along into this where they have no. They're not really in a position to be asking the questions anyway, because they don't have enough information to ask a question anyway. They're coming from such a point of ignorance that, they're not really informed well enough to ask an informed question. So I would just stop doing it as a press thing. I think he should still do the briefings, but it shouldn't be a press briefing. It should be the president, and he should do it from his office with his people sitting around there, have them on the couches, whatever, just a casual sort of briefing every day, letting people know what's going on. I would just take the media completely out of it. I think the press briefings are a good idea, but having the media involved is obviously not. And he's doing the right thing by ending that part of it, and I hope that's what they decide to do. There's a lot of talk about this lawsuit that Christopher Steele is now being sued by the 3 oligarchs who own Alpha Bank. And there's a specific memo that they are focused on, and that's Memo 112. This is very interesting about this Memo 112. Steele is telling the attorneys for Alpha Bank that he's deleted everything, including Memo 112, including his source or sources or discussions with sources having to do with Memo 112. And for the Russian oligarchs of Alpha Bank, that's really the main memo that deals with them. That was the memo that he wrote that suggested that, or he allegedly wrote, although I think it was Glenn Simpson who actually wrote it. But this memo is what the memo was the one that talked about there being communications between Alpha Bank and Trump Tower, Trump server and Trump Tower, and that it was being used as like a back channel communication, and that there was some sort of money laundering scheme or something going on there. And it's interesting that this memo 112 is missing. It's interesting that it never showed up in the total dossier that eventually made its way to the Operation Crossfire Hurricane team. It's interesting that this 112 memo seems to be missing. There's a few other ones as well, but specifically this one. It's also very interesting that Glenn Simpson wrote about Alpha Bank 13 years ago in a story he wrote in the Wall Street Journal with his wife about Russian lobbyists and their influence in D.C., and all of a sudden it shows up here, and I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, I think from Lee Smith's book, he suggests that Steele also dropped the names of these individuals having to do with the FIFA scandal as well. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on here. But I think what's most interesting to me is that Michael Sussman, Hillary's lawyer, her line lawyer through Perkins Coie, went to General Counsel James Baker, FBI Comey's General Counsel James Baker, and he gave him a flash drive and an envelope with some documents. And we know that what was on that thumb drive had something to do with the Alpha Bank Trump Tower, communications. And at the time, we were told that that information came from a woman professor at Indiana University who had a small IT business on the side, and that she had somehow, picked up on this or discovered this. This found its way somehow to Cody Shearer, and either Cody Shearer or Blumenthal provided this information to Sussman on a flash drive, and then he goes and passes it on to James Baker, General Counsel of the FBI, Comey's FBI lawyer. And so they've got this information, and then Steele gets this information, puts it in a memo, but then the memo does not find its way to Operation Crossfire Hurricane team, which means that someone killed it. And my guess is it was Glenn Simpson. And the reason is likely because maybe Simpson was given a heads up that, hey, that stuff that you've got that you're going to pass to us about Trump server and Alpha Bank server, whatever, is bogus. We've investigated it. It's bunk. It's not true. Save it. Kill it. Get rid of it. Don't send it over. Because it looks bad. It looks bad that you would have Confusion GPS, and who actually, I believe that Glenn Simpson's actually the primary author of the dossier, not Steele. And the FBI knows that because they were working with him along with the CIA. But anyway, I guess it would look bad if you had Steele, so-called Steele dossier, providing that information, which was going to be blown up. It's about the same time that you got Sussman, Hillary's lawyer, bring that information in, and it came sourced from Cody Shearer. That probably would look bad. And I think that's why probably they told him to kill that memo and not send it over. John Durham has added a attorney named Peter Angelini to his team. Peter Angelini was in charge of going after public corruption in Chicago. He also served in the Ukraine as an assistant legal attaché. Durham has also added a federal prosecutor named Andrew DeFilippini, and also a Connecticut prosecutor named Niraj Patel. Those people are now part of the Durham team. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.